Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and I'm your host, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. Today we're going to be talking about the Nicki Minaj saga continues. Reid decided to, yesterday, Don Lemon had dipped his toe in, and now Reid has dipped her toe back into the pool, and said some pretty ridiculous things, and really, what's the tactic, they use on the left, the Linsky tactic of you got to accuse them, your opponents, of doing the thing that you're doing. So she's accusing the right of only using Nicki and not caring about the culture, which I'm not going to go out and listen to Nicki Minaj because that's not my thing, though everyone's heard Super Bass, who hasn't. But she's saying that they're only using them for their anti-COVID, anti-vax sort of talking points, while and not really caring for her. They say they don't care about her free speech, and I'm like, no, we care about free speech. That's what we do here on the right. We actually do care about people's rights, but we know that people like Reid are willing to discard anyone who disagrees with her and their ideology as she carries water for the Democrat Party. So I'm going to play her reaction to the whole drama. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to talk about that all day. But this is a fun topic, I got to say. You guys know I've been having fun about this the past couple of days with the whole Nicki Minaj story. The White House did just admit that they killed 10 civilians in Afghanistan. The drone strike that was supposed to go after ISIS-K, when Biden's like, we will hunt you down when we feel like it, essentially. And they did a strike, and I guess that was supposed to make people feel better, like he was gonna do his job. And of course, civilians did suffer and pay. And at first they said the strike was true, the strike was righteous. Obviously, it was not. And they said there was a secondary explosion from bombs. That was a lie. And now they're admitting, after New York Times did a thorough investigation, the White House has admitted they made a boo-boo. And they cost 10 people their lives. So that is breaking news, and we're also going to be touching on, I got a video from Ted Cruz talking about the border situation, which is still a crisis. I know there's so many crises in the Biden administration that it's kind of hard to focus on one, but I want to highlight that a little bit, and also just really dive into the fact that they're running things so poorly. I don't understand why any American would still look you in the eye and still push for universal health care, single payer health care, and push it with so much ferociousness, when it's like, dude, the government is not doing a good job taking care of us. They're not meant to take care of us. They're meant to like protect our rights, ensure the rights of the governed, and they don't even do that great. They don't even do that great. So do you really want to? I understand so much of this argument is really stemmed on the fact that you don't want to pay, and there's some people who really can't afford it, and we do have a lot of generous social programs in America. But the argument about the healthcare is some people just don't want to pay for it, because it's not that you think the healthcare should be free. You think nurses and doctors should be paid, right? Right. So you think someone should have to pay. You think those people should be paid, so someone has to pay them. You just don't want to pay them. So you think everyone, even people who can pay, you're willing to sacrifice their insurance so you don't have to pay, so we can all get on government health care. But what happens when the government starts dictating your life because they control the power of your life and death in their hands? It's just not good. And the COVID situation, the pandemic, should let you know that is too much power to give to one person. That is absolutely too much power to give to the Democrats, or the Republicans, or any party. And you know what? The Democrats will go around talking about how tyrannical Trump is, and these Republican governors and so on. But they still want to keep increasing the power of the government because they're trying to make sure that they'll always be in control, and they can kind of move the system to a way that their opponents will never win again. Ben Shapiro had an interesting show the other day, and he talked a lot about the government and how it's basically, elections basically come, okay, well, your guy wins, they'll do stuff, and then my guy wins, and they'll undo all the stuff that you did, and then they'll do more stuff, and then we'll try to correct it by getting our guy back in. But what happens when you have a lot of government actors who are like kind of loyal to their sort of way of thinking, and they're going to use the power of the federal government to just kind of block you everywhere? And Trump didn't clean house when he got in, and people he did fire, people had a fit about. But then you find out you got people like Mark Milley and folks who are willing to undermine the president at every turn. Or you have someone who's going to use OSHA in a way that OSHA is not supposed to be used to force mandates. So what happens when our system kind of starts going beyond the scope, and the executive branch has gotten too big and the federal government's gotten too big, that you can't really start to undo when you get your person in office? So it was an interesting day with Ben, but I've given too much of a summary without even saying the usual spiel. So please go to blacktnews.com, check out my website, check out different content that I have there. Please make sure that you're following me on all my social media platforms, on my TikTok, on my Facebook, on my YouTube, on my Instagram. The handle all of them are at Black T News. If you follow me on Twitter, it's at True Black T, and my backup TikTok is also at True Black T. So make sure that you're following. Thank you to everyone who watches live, who watches later, to the people. Some of you are watching on your job, and some of you are watching on your way home. Thank you guys very much for watching, and for sharing, for telling your coworkers, your friends, your family about Black T. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you are sharing articles. I appreciate everyone who does that and shares videos. If you would like to support Black T News and go the extra step further, you can go to the website to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a donation. And I very much appreciate that. This is your call to action. If you like what I do, go ahead and support Black T News. Go ahead and support Black T News. You can also support Black T News by buying merchandise. Like, I love the Cool Goat hoodie. Got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of Joe Biden's racism on the back. And oh my gosh, I saw an interesting video today with Judge Joe Brown. I don't know how old the video was, but someone was asking him, did he still think Joe Biden was racist? And he said, this isn't on camera. So this is just hearsay from what I'm telling you, what he said, because he said people didn't have like video phones, cell phones all the time to record. But he said, when he was talking about not doing the integration with kids, I mean, people have a line about the racial jungle, and people say, well, the context of this, blah, blah, blah. Judge Joe Brown is claiming that Biden said that black people were cockroaches and like they'd be an infestation essentially, and they shouldn't come in and intertwine. So if that is the case, then him being pro-segregation goes a little deeper than even what Kamala hinted at on the campaign trail. So that's interesting. I just thought I would share that. Maybe I'll have to play the TikTok for you guys another time. I didn't download it, but I did like it, so I do have access to it. We got other stuff on the store. I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroyed, record low unemployment, et cetera, tax cut, and this lousy t-shirt. You get that. I'm not the victim you're looking for. I do have a book out. I have 14 books actually out, but this one is Slay Your Fear. I wrote this during the pandemic because some people had clearly lost their minds. How to overcome a spirit of fear, because if you allow people to just inject you with fear and you are not a rational person anymore, they can really take advantage of you, and a lot of people have. We got other shirts, of course. We got mugs, and of course I love that you are not that special. Got those in cute little adorable mugs. So please check out the store if you like what I do here. Please consider supporting. I actually do not have a meme for you guys today. I'm sorry. I did look in my usual spots really quickly, but if it'll make you laugh, those are Joe Biden's disapproval numbers going up, so that makes me happy. Maybe you get a good laugh out of that. He is tanking. So that made me laugh. So maybe that'll make you guys laugh. Make you it's not really a joke, it's real life, but something a little pick me up right there. So let's just hop into the story of the day, or the stories of the day. I want to start with Nicki Minaj again. Like I said, I'm going to talk about other things, but this story is great. This story is amazing. So Joy Reid had a segment the other night referring to everyone talking about this now. We know if you don't know, Nicki Minaj made some comments about some effects of the vaccine that people are like, that's not true, about her cousins. She said her cousin's friend took it and his testicles swole up, and then the person called off their marriage or whatever. So everyone's talking about this, and people are like, that doesn't make any sense. Though FYI, people do report those things on VAERS, but it doesn't mean that it's not a coincidence or anything like that. But Nicki said other things like about the vaccine. She said that she'd probably take it because she wants to go on tour, and but the thing that really grinds people's gears is that she said, pray about it, you take it, you got to pray about it and make a decision for yourself. Because they don't want people to have a decision for yourself. So Joy Reid was like, oh, you're using your platform irresponsibly, and she didn't really go off on her, but she's like, I'm just disappointed in you, but you can say it on as nice as you want to. But she then went and said, you're spreading information that's killing people. So when you start accusing people of killing people, I think that's when things can start getting a little personal. So Nicki went hard at Joy. She called her like an Uncle Tom, essentially. She said, you're just it's sad when you have to put up a black person go up to silence another black woman at the behest of white people. And it was, if you know much about Joy Reid, who has gone after Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott over racial things, it's delicious, it's funny. That's why I love the story, because if anyone deserves to be called out, it's Joy Reid. And she pointed out that Nicki pointed out that Joy was hesitant about the vaccine, and I played a GOP collection video that they had of Biden and Kamala and other people being hesitant about taking it, so they could spread misinformation when it could potentially cause Trump to lose the presidency. They didn't care about the general population. They didn't care about the collateral damage. And Nicki saying, hey, think about it, pray about it. And I also don't buy I think people should post things in general, whether you're a star or you're an average Joe. You should try to be responsible with your account and what you're talking about, and try to make sure stuff isn't true. If you're posting something that's a joke, make sure it's kind of obvious or explain it or something like that. I don't think you should purposely spread misinformation. And then there's people who spread stuff and don't know that it's misinformation. And then there's people who aren't spreading misinformation, and then you'll get a fact check ding anyway because it's inconvenient, and they don't want you spreading things that's going to hurt Joe Biden and other people. So, but Nicki, just because someone is a rap star and they have a big platform, that doesn't mean that they're not a human being. And if you think just because someone is famous that they're going to have that influence, that's a conversation you need to have with your kids or something, and they need to understand these people are real life ordinary people, and it's the Democrats who have used pop stars in their campaigns as focal points to get people to vote. They're the ones who had Cardi B interview Joe Biden. And they knew it wouldn't be a tough interview, as Candace Owens pointed out when she got to the tiff with Cardi B. They didn't expect any pushback. He won't have real conversations with the media really, but he'll have one with Cardi B and other celebrities, because they're trying to appeal to a certain demographic and have some kind of validity from talking to these people So they're the ones who elevated them beyond maybe their expertise. So that's what you guys did. So if Nicki Minaj is saying something and it's impacting all these people, that's on you guys. But please raise your kids to be critical thinkers. So regardless of what someone says, whether they're a celebrity or an average Joe, you can just kind of analyze the conversation itself. And if you did read the string of tweets and stuff from Nicki, having a conversation with her fans, because a lot of people, though everyone can see it and it's a public platform, a lot of celebrities do consider it as just a good way to interact with their fans. So I'm reading it and she's just having a conversation with people. And people could have just laughed off the ball story and went at that, but then they went hard on this woman, especially like Don Lemon. But granted, that was after she went hard on Joy. But Joy accused her of spreading information that was leading to people's death, which Joy and other people did. So Joy Reid got back on it to talk about the controversy. And this is her segment, or a clip of the segment.
But the worst part of all this, honestly, is not even the personal attacks. The worst part is who is enjoying this so much. People like white nationalist, curious Viktor Orban enthusiast, and no friend of hip-hop or non-white people, period, Tuckums Carlson. Nicki Minaj endorsed this clip of his yesterday where he praises her for, quote, enraging the political class. And when people responded that she might not want to be associated with a white nationalist, she essentially gave in to the right's favorite talking point, that somehow celebrities are not allowed to agree with Republicans. She also tweeted, you know how many U.S. presidents were white supremacists? Well, yes, we do. A whole lot of them. But what people like Tuckums and the Ben Shapiros and other right-wing bomb throwers want is not Nicki Minaj to have free speech. What they want is a vehicle to drag as many of her fans into their anti-vax camp as they can. They need and crave authentic members of the culture, hip-hop culture. Let's just be clear. They look down on that culture and hate that culture and would never, ever, ever support someone like Nicki Minaj other than to pull her onto their team. Case in point, Laura Ingraham once criticized President Obama for just meeting with Ms. Minaj, citing the profanity in her lyrics. But they need her right now. And let's not forget the freak out the right had over the WAP lyrics by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, or Lil Nas X for giving the devil a lap dance in a music video. The right has no use for people in the culture until they're useful for the purposes of hurting people in the culture.
That's crazy. First of all, Lil Nas giving the devil a lap dance should not be a part of anyone's culture. That should, and if that's where you're trying to take the culture, people need to push back on that. But he got just got an award at the VMAs, I think. So they clearly want to take America and the culture in a bad place. But y'all need to reject that stuff. And you're criticizing people. I can't even believe she bothered to bring up Lil Nas. To bring that up. That was the craziest thing. He's selling Satan shoes, man, with blood in it. So for Joy Reid to even bring that up, that's crazy. Do I plan to go out and buy a bunch of Nicki Minaj's albums? No, but that's not the way people are supporting her right now. She said we don't care about her free speech. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. I care about everyone's free speech. I think it's a shame. I care about Joy Reid's speech. She's just, but I wish she wouldn't use it to lie and malign people all the time. But I care about everyone's free speech, and she certainly should be more careful with her platform or responsible with her platform because she's supposed to be on the news. So there's that. But we care about people's free speech, so she's lying there. And we are supporting Nicki Minaj. Not necessarily by going out and buying her music in droves, which some people do react by doing that. So we'll see what happens. Because she has a new album, I think, coming out. And I'm not going to run and buy it because that's not the kind of music I listen to. And her saying something that makes sense, and not all the things she said make sense, but pray about it and think about it, it's your choice. That makes a lot of sense. And that's what really grinds their gears. So I support her right to say that. And other people who like blatantly disagree with her on the right are like, okay, but you guys are treating her wrong still. And I can come out and I can say that. People who are very pro-vaccine can still support her without, and we're supporting her as a person. Joy Reid is accusing us because we don't support the culture or what she does, that we're not supporting Nicki. Nicki Minaj, she's a real person beyond her profession. She's a real person beyond that. So yes, we can support her without being okay with the profanity and the vulgarity and Lil Nas giving the devil a lap dance. We can support individuals and care about the individual. You know, I don't know if Joy Reid is a Christian, but it's kind of that concept of you love the sinner, but you hate the sin, you know? Where you can look beyond the evils of what a person is perhaps doing and then just kind of care about them and try to help them, and, you know? But I don't know why that's beyond a concept for Joy. And maybe it's not, and she's just being dishonest. Of course she's being dishonest, but I don't know how deeply rooted it is and just how devoted she is to the dogma. I'm not sure. But let's go back a little bit. She mentioned Tucker Carlson, who is not a white supremacist. And Nicki Minaj did tweet that out, and people were upset. Man, I wish I could have seen Joy lose her mind when she saw that tweet. And Nicki was like, I can do what I want. Let me see if I can find that tweet. She said, right, I can't speak to, agree with, or even look at someone from a particular political party. People aren't human anymore. If you're black and a Democrat tells you to shove marbles up your butt, you simply have to. If another party tells you to look out for that bus, stand there and get hit. So in other words, y'all do anything a Democrat will tell you to do. But if a Republican tells you something true, you can't believe it at the expense of your own suffering. You will stand there and just allow yourself to be destroyed. So someone that came to her defense and she retweeted them and like, nah, you should have did that. He's a white supremacist. He's not. He's really not. That's just a dumb talking point that people say to shut down each other. So she's ignoring that. Why even bother arguing with them and saying, no, he's not a white supremacist? How's she supposed to know or care? I'm sure she don't watch Tucker every night. She's just probably watching stuff that has her dinged in, you know, the headlines and stuff. But that's how they get you. Southern Poverty Law Center, they just label whoever white supremacist. And then they can say, see, this person's a white supremacist. Without them being a white supremacist. There are white supremacists out there. There are people like neo-Nazi far-right people that we don't like for sure, who target people like Ben Shapiro mercilessly. But Tucker Carlson's not one of those people. And from my understanding, and I haven't been watching Tucker faithfully, or actually a lot lately, but I hear he's pro-vax. But she mentioned Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro is very pro-vaccine. Ben Shapiro is very pro-vaccine. Ben Shapiro has been very lenient with the government doing control stuff at first, really. As a matter of fact, I stopped listening and watching Ben for a time because he was kind of really annoying in the beginning stages of the pandemic, in my opinion. I was like, let me see what Michael Knowles has to say. So, you know, because he was saying stuff like, I love synagogue, but don't go to synagogue, don't go to church. And everyone thinks that you shouldn't do that, and according to the major religions. And I'm paraphrasing, but I do have the screenshots saved. I do have them saved. I was so annoyed. I actually did a TikTok about it. Someone's like, Ben Shapiro's never wrong. I'm like, oh yes, he's been wrong before. And then the kicker was, in his series of tweets, he's like, and the right needs to stop acting like all these like measures that they're taking is going to be long term, and the left needs to stop pretending like it's going to be long term. I hope he updates his list of times where he's wrong. He has an official list of times where he admits that he was wrong. I hope this is one of those times. Because even though he's like, don't do it, left, of course they're going to do that, because we always say the slippery slope, and because they'll take it as far as that you let them. And of course, now we have the president of the United States trying to use OSHA to force everyone to get the jab with no regard in respect to whether people have had COVID and have antibodies, which is super crazy. Super crazy. They're willing to lose nurses and doctors and all kinds of other staff who don't want to get vaccinated to just make the bed shortage worse. And we don't know why. And people like Nicki's like, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but this is really weirding me out now. This is weirding me out now. So anyway, Joy mentioning Ben Shapiro. If you've been listening to Ben Shapiro for 5 minutes during this pandemic, for even like 5 minutes, you would know that he's very pro-vaccine for someone on the right. As a matter of fact, some years ago, when he'd had a question like on a Q&A, I think at a college for YAF or something, and someone said something about forced vaccinations, and he said he basically thought there was an argument where you could mandate vaccines, and I was mad at him. Another time I was mad at Ben. And I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm just anti-mandate. And he's against the mandates, I think mostly because they don't make sense. Mostly because they don't make sense. So her invoking Ben Shapiro, that's crazy. But yes, they care about her free speech. And yes, they care about the mandates. Because they don't, like I said, they don't make sense. And Ben Shapiro, he also mentioned it today. I didn't hear him talk about how Joy mentioned him. But he mentioned how the White House, they're willing to be very harsh. We're losing patience with you. And punish people who are unvaccinated. But they'll do that specifically to people who they think they're not their voters. But someone who they think is on their side or on their side of the culture, Nicki Minaj, they'll call them up and invite them to the White House. But they're saying they didn't invite her. Nicki's saying they invited her, but they at least did a phone call and tried to arrange something so they could talk her into it. So they're like, oh, we'll be all nice to you. But it's like, why aren't you nice to everyone? Why aren't you nice to everyone? Because they're clearly gunning for Ron DeSantis. Even though Ron made sure his elderly population got the vaccine, they were on that very quickly. They just don't like that he won't accept their government mandates, and he fights against that. But he's actually being a smart governor who likes to read, who likes to follow the data, who likes to follow the science. But it seems like they want Florida to do bad because they don't want him to be popular. And they don't want him to be a powerhouse to run against. I'm Biden's so old and senile. I don't think he'll run in 2024. But if they're setting up Kamala or whoever is going to be the person to run in that time, they don't want Ron to be a powerhouse. Because I'm not convinced Trump's running in 2024, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. But Ron DeSantis is a contender. People are already prepping their worse than Trump stories with Ron DeSantis. It's starting to eke out. So I played a little bit of a live that she did on Instagram. Someone had clipped part of it that I didn't play. That I'm going to play right now. And then I think we'll move on.
You can't just...
Oop, I'm not on my Bluetooth. Hold on. Sorry.
Ask a question about... You can't just innocently ask a question about something going in your body? Do y'all realize that I remember going to China and they were telling us, you cannot speak out again. And I remember all of us thinking, oh, okay, well, we understand and we respect the laws here and that it's so different where we live. But don't y'all see what's happening? Don't y'all see that we are living now in that time where people will turn their back on you if you don't, not only not not agreeing. But people will isolate you if you simply speak and ask a question. Y'all don't see what the First of all, I didn't give any facts about any vaccine. I didn't give any facts about anything. I simply said, okay, well, you know, I didn't want to travel with my tiny baby, yada, yada, yada. And then I said, my cousin, this is the reason he didn't want to take the vaccine. And Twitter can just wake their crusty ass up and stop me from asking questions? To stop a person from... So what it's making me think now is that there's something bigger to it. You know, like when I kept on seeing all these people with all these conspiracy theories, I would be like, oh, what? Oh, please, you know. But what in the world scared y'all that much that made you disable my Twitter? I have not put out... You can't just...
And, that's it for that clip. So, yeah. So that's interesting that she compared it to China, and people think that we are living in that time of where you can't say stuff. And we've been conditioned to attack each other. There's a video, my sister told me about it, I think, last week, but I saw it going around, like big people on Twitter were sharing it. There was a man in Target. He was masked. He was vaccinated, and other people were masked. But there was one lady who wasn't wearing a mask, and he was following her around the store. And he's like, "My wife is a scientist," and she says all. She's like, "Why do you care? Stop following me around." And he's trying to follow her around, condemn her, and shame her. And other women are just like, "Leave her alone. Leave her alone." He's like, no, she's doing something that's wrong. She's doing something that's putting people in danger. It's like, if you're really that concerned, why are you following her around in the store? Why are you following her around in the store? And he's vaccinated and he has a mask on. And her crime is she doesn't have a mask on. Yet he follows her. So there's a lot of people who are empowered to be tyrannical, and it's just a mean-spirited... people have a lot of mean bones in their body, and they have full liberty now. They feel empowered to just treat people cruelly. And that's why a lot of people really like this. They like that power. And people like to feel important, like they're saving the world without like doing anything. So they can like put on a mask and feel like they're saving the world and have that hero complex. That's what a lot of it is. That's what a lot of it is. And they can condemn you for not being part of the experiment. They'll do that. So we're living in a really crazy time. So yesterday I mentioned how the White House was decided to limit the supply of some therapy that people were using for once you get COVID, a treatment they're using in the hospital. They're using a lot in Florida, and Florida had had requested a lot of it, rather. And but Florida's not doing what the Biden administration wants. So now they're talking about equity, and they have to make sure that states are getting, like a normal supply. But it's like, why aren't you giving it to people who are sick? Why aren't you giving it to people who are sick? And so when Jen Psaki was confronted about it, she was like, that's inaccurate. And then she went on to explain why they're doing it. So I played it yesterday, but I'm going to play it right now again.
And data available showed a waning efficacy of vaccines after a certain number of months.
Speaking of the waning efficacy of vaccines, I do have another question about the president's COVID plan. He promised on September 9th that he was going to send 50% more supply of monoclonal antibodies to states. Yet, the Biden administration is cutting supplies in red states by 50%. So, for example, in Florida, they were expecting to get 70,000 doses this week, which they say they need. They're only getting 30,000 doses. And this is not just for unvaccinated people. In South Florida, half the people who are seeking this treatment are fully vaccinated. So why is the Biden administration cutting these supplies?
That's not accurate. So let me give you the accurate information. First of all, we are increasing our distribution this month by 50%. In early August, we were distributing an average of 100,000 doses per week. Now we're shipping an average of 150,000 doses per week. Over the last month, though, and one thing that I think people need to understand for clarity, facts, I know you're like facts, is that monoclonal antibodies are life-saving therapies that are used after infection to prevent more severe outcomes. So clearly the way to protect people and save more lives is to get them vaccinated so that they don't get the COVID to begin with. But over the last month, given the rise in cases due to the Delta variant and the lower number of vaccination rates in some of these states, like Florida, like Texas, just 7 states are making up 70% of the orders. Our supply is not unlimited, and we believe it should be equitable across states across the country.
There's been no reports of a lack of supply, so why cut them to those states only if there's no reports?
I think our role as the government overseeing the entire country is to be equitable in how we distribute. We're not going to give a greater percentage to Florida over Oklahoma, nor do I think are you suggesting that. I think we have to move on.
That's why equity sucks. Equity sucks when you hear people on the left talk about equity. Equity sucks. What about the need of the people? What about the need of people who are actually sick, who need it? And she's so smug, like it's not happening. Then she explains why they're doing it in the name of equity. And then her attitude is just so terrible. It's just so terrible. And she's like, well, this is a medicine that you would take after you're sick. So the best thing is to do is to just not get sick. Is that how you treat people who don't treat their bodies right and they come in and they have a heart problem compounded by their weight or something? Like, well, the best thing in your condition should have been to never be fat. Like, no one treats anyone that way in the ER. People don't do that, but they are saying that we should probably do that now. Are you vaccinated, unvaccinated? Well, we got to treat this person. That's what people are suggesting, writing articles about. Jimmy Kimmel's joking about it. I don't think it's a joke. But at the same time, these are the people who want single-payer health care. They want free health care. They campaign for it, even though Jimmy Kimmel, I'm sure he has his own health care that's probably pretty good because he's Jimmy Kimmel. But people will push these radical ideas. And so that example and the mandates and the whole Nicki Minaj story brings me to this point. People who want to push government-run healthcare, government-run anything, are fools. Are fools. And they should know now. They should know now. Like, well, we got to run it in inequity. What about need? What about need? It looks like they're really singling out Florida and Ron DeSantis. Why not just give it to the people who need it? Because people who get the vaccine can still get COVID. And there's going to be people who never get it. There's people who can't get it. Like, can't take the vaccine. Or they're scared to take the vaccine because they're allergic to everything. I played a video, and I think it was probably in my Let's TikTok about it, but I'm not sure, of a man he was Canadian. And his job wanted him to take it, and they wouldn't give it an exemption unless he, got like a medical exemption and went through like a specialty person to give it. So he was tested, and he was like, he had a reaction to like every single like ingredient in there, and so he had pictures and he showed it, and so then they're like, oh, we're not gonna give you the medical exemption. And he's like, what? And they're like, we're just going to give you the dosage of the vaccine slowly while we keep you on Benadryl. So they're still like, we're going to give you the vaccine, but we're just going to do it very, very slowly, like through the course of hours, while making sure that we're treating you for your allergic reactions as we give you the vaccine. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And like, he's the type of person that if he takes something, he's going to have a reaction to it. Some people react not great to medicine. My dad is that way. Like he had some eye drops because he had like cataracts removed in his eyes. And they're like, no one has any problems with this. Man, he looked like a monster. a monster. He came down the stairs on Christmas Day, and we're like horrified. You know the guy from Goonies. I know it's terrible. I love my dad, but like the monster Goonies, the guy. I can't. Was it Crunk? Maybe someone in the comments can tell me. The guy from Goonies. I haven't seen it in a while, but he. From the eye drops, they said weren't gonna affect anyone, and like we went to the Philippines. I don't know if it was when we went to the Philippines, but he went somewhere for a missionary trip, took a vaccine, and then he was sick as a dog after taking it. Normally, people don't have the effects. So when his doctor asked about him taking it, and we're just like, we don't want him to take it. We don't want him to take it, and he had COVID, so he should have natural immunity. They can go ahead and test him for the antibodies, which I don't know why they didn't do, but he had it, and he recovered. So if he has those antibodies, they should really let him be, but they want to push it. But he's someone who has bad reactions to stuff. So this is a guy who literally tested positive, like, for every sort of reaction possible in the medication. So there's like 100% chances he's going to have a reaction to the shot. And they're like, we'll just give it to you slowly. And he's like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, we're not going to write you the exemption. And he's like, but my job won't accept this if you don't give me the exemption. And they didn't care. So I don't know what the update is on him, whether he's gonna be able to keep his job. And a lot of people are just kind of writing it out and seeing what'll happen. So there's a lot of people playing chicken with their livelihoods right now. And I don't know how he'll get out of it because he's Canadian. So, you know, they have a different view of freedom and liberty than we have. But, well, I don't know. Are we one to talk? Because we're living in a weird time right now. If Trump was doing all this stuff, people would be pitching a fit. People would be pitching a fit with all the measures that Trump is taking. They made up stories about them limiting ventilators in blue states, stuff that wasn't even true. And Biden is doing stuff that's limiting stuff in red states that could actually cost people's lives. And the media is just mum on it, and they're just letting him getting away with it. And Jen Psaki is like, well, they should be vaccinated. If they're vaccinated, then they won't need it. They won't need the drug if they're vaccinated because they won't get sick. It's like, okay, but people do get sick. Florida has a lot of elderly people too. Very high, because a lot of people go there to retire because it's a great state. Great state, a lot of sun. They don't want to pay taxes. They go to Florida to live out the rest of their lives in bliss. And he was very, Ron DeSantis made sure people got the vaccines. And then they tried to say, oh, he's pushing the vaccines because these are his donors. People were trying to say that he was pushing this drug because they were trying to say he had a stake in it or it was a donor or something crazy like that. And now they're like, well, now we don't think you should have it because of equity. Next time, please look up this story. Please look up articles about it. Please save the little video of Jen Psaki like, well, you should get vaccinated. Please save that. And next time someone talks to you about equity, tell them that equity is rationing people's lives. That's an example of real life equity right there. That's a real life example of equity. So, I don't understand people who still want to push universal health care, socialized medicine, single payer health care. And especially people who know it'll be at the expense of the private healthcare market. Because at first, people were trying to deny that was a thing. And then it seemed like in 2020, on the campaign trail and stuff, people began to kind of accept that was the reality. And then I saw people on the left really pushing and saying, we don't care. Trying to say, well, you have your private health care insurance, or you have your insurance through your employer, and that's not good because what if you don't have your employer? And which I think was interesting because people did lose their jobs during the pandemic and didn't have that health care. So it made me question, did they do that on purpose? So they can keep pushing for that? because you're like, well, you may not always have your job. And they made a scenario, and I know there was the pandemic, but the restrictions are the things that shut down the businesses. I mean, there are people who stopped going to the mall and other stuff like that, but people would have still kept trying to do stuff. To a certain degree, they wouldn't have been shut up in their homes if people wouldn't have done all those draconian measures that they ended up doing. So it was the measures that the governors and whoever took that really shut down the states and the restaurant, the malls and the restaurants and the bowling alleys and the gyms. The gyms didn't make any sense to me anyway, but they shut down all the stuff. So they're the ones who basically severed the ties of people having their private health care that they had. And people would go like, well, look, you might not always have your job, so you might not always have that health care. It made me question if they did it on purpose. Made me question it. And now they're doing all this stuff with the COVID stuff that they have been giving it for free. And now they're trying to ration the care, which is crazy to me. If they say if you're unvaccinated, they don't want then you shouldn't be treated at the hospital because they're overwhelmed. Which they're not overwhelmed because of COVID. They're overwhelmed because they have a shortage of staff, which is only being made worse by them firing nurses because they won't get the jab. They were heroes before. They worked through this whole thing, obviously unvaccinated, and now you want to fire them because they don't want to get the jab. That's crazy, and you're making the problem worse. You're making the problem worse. That's another thing too. Why, like, Biden is making it so that if you work at a nursing home, you have to be vaccinated or they're going to strip Medicare and Medicaid from these places. So the more tied you are into the government and the federal government, the people pulling the strings of those have control of your life. So they're playing games with your livelihood because of the connection to the Medicare and Medicaid. And Obama did that too. And Joe Biden, of course, was a VP during that time with schooling. They wanted to start restricting your funds for the schools if you wouldn't allow boys into girls' locker rooms. So why would people want there to be more government, overload, the overbearing government over everything? Why do you want them to control your health care, to control your schools, all that stuff? It doesn't make any sense. People should be able to see. And I know people don't want to see because a lot of these people don't want to pay the bill themselves. Because they don't believe in free health care because they believe these people should be paid. Nurses and doctors should be paid. If we had the scenario like, I believe in free healthcare, it's like, okay, you believe doctors and nurses should work for free? No, of course not. That'd be slavery. No, they do a good job. They should be paid. Okay, well, who should pay for it? Well, the government, I guess. So you think nurses and teachers and firemen and all those people should pay? Like, no. Why would I do? Because they're taxpayers. They're getting paid somehow. Healthcare is not, I know they say this human right, it's a right, that's something they say in other countries, it's not a constitutional right in America. And we live in the United States of America. You do not have the right to someone's labor. You do not have the right to their product because people produce the medicine and all the other stuff. I understand sometimes it's hard to pay. And insurance is just not a blanket bill thing. I mean, insurance with everything is you pay for it in case something happens. It's likely you're going to get sick sometime. So it's worth it to pay for that. It's worth it to pay for life insurance because you're definitely going to die sometime. In Michigan, they make you pay for your car insurance. If you go out on the road and you don't have some, you're going to get a ticket. Because they suspect if you get into an accident, of course, that is very likely. I don't know how likely it is, but, you just want it covered. And you pay for house insurance or in case there's a fire or you're robbed or something like that. So you pay for it just in case. Health insurance people would like if you just paid for it and actually never really got sick. But thinking that it's just like a magical wallet, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's not what it's supposed to be. But there's just a lot of people who don't want to pay. One thing I started saying when people are like, we're talking about pro-life stuff and people say, oh, well, the child, it's connected to the mother and it can't survive. And I'm like, can a newborn survive? And I'm like, try to walk it back or something like that, as if, viability and dependencies, it should be the reason why they should okay abortion. And so one video I was talking, I'm like, if you let a newborn, a toddler, any of them just go off on their own and they don't have any help, like they will die. And I said, can young adults even survive on their own? Because they're still on their parents' insurance until they're 26. So just people who don't want any sort of responsibility, and they're willing to give that all up, surrender any sort of freedom so they don't have to think about the long haul. But what happens when the guy you don't like is in charge of everything? Or maybe the guy you like, your side will always be in charge. I mean, that's why they're trying to pass so much legislation with their, I forgot what the bill was, but they're trying to pass legislation with their version of election integrity, which is really the federal government taking over elections, which a lot of the stuff they're trying to do was illegal, but they don't care. And their reasoning is there's too many Republican governors you can't trust because they tried to push the big lie, so we got to take it over federally. And you could say, well, why would they do that? What would happen if someone they don't like gets in charge of that? They're trying to make it so that they won't have to worry about them not being in charge. Our government is getting too big, way too big. And people people claimed that Biden was supposed to be back to normal, getting back to the norms. And Biden has made things so much worse. So much worse. So no, you should not want government-run healthcare, especially when they could decide that you have to be fired if they take Medicare, Medicaid, if you won't get vaccinated. Why would you want universal healthcare in America? Why would you want universal healthcare in America when the Biden administration can decide, oh, Florida's not going to get this medicine that they need, that they're requesting, because we want to push equity now, and we want to be frank, they want to push equity and just limit their supply because they don't like Ron DeSantis. And it's cruel. And it's sick to even think that could be true. But these same people played all kinds of political games before. Like when Biden and Kamala undermined the vaccine when Trump was president. They're like, even if we're some people saying, well, we're concerned that there's going to be an October surprise and the vaccine will be available and people will be able to go out to vote and it hasn't been properly vetted, blah, blah, blah. Like, they did not want people to have any sort of hope concerning the vaccine because they weren't done ruling your life. And now they're going to keep pushing it. As soon as Gavin Newsom won that recall and he was successful, LA County announced more lockdown measures, more restrictions, more masks. And, there's a mayor out there who got spotted at a nightclub partying with one of the Black Lives Matter co-founders. I think it was San Francisco mayor. Yep, San Francisco mayor was in with breaks to health order, was partying with a BLM co-founder at a nightclub. And people will see the hypocrisy. Now, some people don't know because they don't follow any kind of news. But some people will stare it right in the face and know their leaders are lying to them. And they'll just excuse it and still be sheep. I don't know what to do with that right now, to be frank with you. Because some people just don't want to listen. Now, you got to try, because there are plenty of people who can get red-pilled, as we like to say, when they look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, these people aren't following their own rules. Oh my gosh, these people have been lying. If they're lying about this, what are they lying about everything else? And people will go down the rabbit hole and do a deep dive. That is a thing that happens. But there's some people, and oh my gosh, I've been arguing with so many people lately that are just insane, and they have no there appears to be no way out. So with some people, I just decided it's too much of my time, and I'm just gonna start blocking a lot more people, like on TikTok and other places. But I hate the fact that we're at a point where we can't have conversations and people aren't willing to even think critically a little bit. But they don't want you to, and that's why they're mad at Nicki Minaj, because she told people to think. She may be wrong with some of the stuff that she says. I don't think she's any kind of expert. She in her craft, sure, and I don't know how much she knows outside of that. She seems like like I said, she's smarter than the average rapper bear. Because I've seen some of these other guys try to talk about politics, and let's say I think she's more impressive than Cardi B. But they're scared of her. And Joy Reid said, oh, they just want to use her. That's a Linsky tactic. You got to accuse your side, the other side, of what you're really doing. They just want to use people like Nicki Minaj. They just want to use her. And they're mad that she's off script. And they want to rein her back in. But they know that the ethnicity that has the least vaccinated people are black people. So they can't have someone with the culture just telling people to think about it and pray about it, make their own decisions, because they want to force people. And they're really coming to a head, like, are enough black people going to get mad about it and fight back? And are they going to lose that key demographic that they need to survive? Or are they going to smash them, pummel them into submission so they can keep pushing the mandates? I don't know what will happen first, but it's interesting and it's worth talking about. And that's why I've talked about it like all week, because I do think it's worth talking about. Moving on, I want to show you this little clip from Ted Cruz at the border. The hour's getting kind of late, but this is important.
I'm here in Del Rio, Texas, September 16th. I'm underneath the bridge. Behind me, 10,503 people. This is a crisis that is unfolding. It's a man-made crisis. Just over a week ago, there were fewer than 1,000 people here under the bridge, averaging between 700 and 1,000. Then, on September 8th, the Biden administration made a decision to cancel deportation flights back to Haiti. The vast majority of these illegal immigrants crossing in Del Rio are from Haiti. When they made that decision 8 days ago, the 700 to 1,000 people who were here discovered they could stay. They pulled out their cell phones. They called their friends. They called their family. And 8 days later, 700 people became 10,503.
This is an administration of fools. And I'm kind of between trying to figure out how much is just foolishness and how much is deliberately dismantling everything. All of the norms and just, well, they're doing the dismantling the norms on purpose, but the whole border crisis is really puzzling. And I would think they're doing it to a malicious degree, but I'll have to find the clip again. And I've talked about this often, but I don't like the administration, obviously, and I have my critiques. But the first time that I really felt a sense of dread, where I'm like, we're being led by fools who don't know what they're doing. Someone asked Jen Psaki what kind of measures they were taking to stop people from coming. And she started talking. She's like, well, I'm glad you asked that question. And she's all prepared for it. And she started talking about how they started doing radio ads in Spanish and stuff in Venezuela and other places. And then they made a cartoon advising people not to go. And she's like reading off the list of all the media stuff. And I'm just like, just kind of, I don't know, if you had dripped like ice water on top of my head, just kind of running over me. As she proudly boasts all of the dumb things that obviously aren't going to stop people from making the trip to America. If you see a cartoon that says, don't come to America, do you really think that's going to stop you when you know that you think cartoon's going to stop you when there's coyotes and all this other kind of stuff and actual dangers that you could face, and you just still want to get to America? You think cartoon's going to do the job? I don't think so. And then a reporter asked Jen Psaki, like, do you have any evidence this is working? And then she goes, well, we'll never know who decides not to come. So you're just throwing money in the wind, Jen? You admit there's no way to track if your strategy, that sounds dumb anyway, you have no way to track if it's even working. Did you even care? Did you even care? So that was when I was like, oh my gosh, we're actually being led by fools. Led by fools who don't know anything. So I'm kind of split. I don't know how much, like Ben Shapiro kept saying, when there was a story about Trump, he would say don't attribute things to being malicious that could just be like a stupidity. I think there's a lot of stupidity with the Biden administration, which is crazy because a lot of these people are rehires from the Obama administration, including Jen Psaki. So it's not like they're not experienced in this stuff. But there's so many bad things going on. And Mark Levin did an epic rant one day, like all the stuff that they're doing wrong, you'd have to think that they're doing it on purpose. And of course they're doing a lot of bad things on purpose, but it's just extraordinary. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that the Pentagon, this is breaking news, but they did admit that they killed 10 civilians and that it had nothing to do with ISIS. Or the civilians had nothing to do with ISIS. Biden promised that they would go after the people who did the bombing at the airport in Kabul that led to 13 of our troops being killed. He's like, we'll hunt them down. And that was something he needed to say. When he said it, no one believed him. And then they launched a strike. But that strike killed 10 civilians. And the person who they claimed in a white Toyota had something to do with ISIS was an aid worker who was hoping to be a refugee to come to America. He wasn't carrying bombs. He was carrying canisters full of water because his village had a shortage. And they tried to say that the civilians were killed by a secondary explosion because there were bombs in the car. There wasn't. And the New York Times did an excellent reporting on it. And I know we're like, oh my gosh, New York Times. They did a good job reporting on it. And they had said that General Kelly had said, General Milley had said that the strike was true, was righteous. And they lied about the secondary explosion. It had nothing. And so now they've come out and admitted the truth. They killed kids, and that's the last act, the legacy of the 20-year war in Afghanistan. And Biden, and I also heard this on the radio the other day, where it was a Fox News radio. Biden is reported, I think there was a leak actually, about how there are people who disagreed with Biden just pulling out people. And Biden kept saying, no, everybody agreed with it. Everybody agreed with it. I knew that was a lie because it was too stupid to be true. No matter how woke you are and want to learn about white rage, of course it was stupid not to leave some troops there or to pull them all out at once. So here begs the question, why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And our heads not rolling because everyone told Biden not to do it. And here's a bigger question. Because if this was Trump, and I said this before, I'll say it again. If this was Trump who tried to just pull out everybody at once, which Trump wouldn't have done that because obviously that was stupid. If Trump tried to do what Biden did, people would have stopped him. As a matter of fact, when he was talking about pulling out and stuff, Liz Cheney and other people, like they started passing around a story, I think with the Russian Taliban bounty story, which wasn't true, and they used it to try to defund and subvert him. If Trump said we're gonna pull everybody out, people would have been like, that is crazy. They would have started making phone calls. They would have talking to the press. It would have been everywhere. People would have been talking about how crazy that was. They would have did everything to thwart him from it actually happening. So the question is, why because General Milley, he if China had an issue, if they were about to attack them, he promised, like, hey, we'll give you a heads up. And there's other people who are actually, and this is a terrible thing, actually, at least I think it's terrible, but there's other people who are saying he did the right thing, and other people would have did the same thing because they were concerned about Trump. Why did you let Joe Biden do this? Why did you let Joe Biden do this? It doesn't make any sense. Because they wouldn't have let Trump do it. And that was my theory. And it seems like it's obviously very true. It seems like it's obviously pretty true. Next time someone has a conspiracy, just give it a little time. Just give it a little time. So, I believe that is my show for today. That is my show for today. We gotta fight back. We gotta fight back. We gotta fight back in the midterms. We gotta take back the House. We gotta take back the Senate. And in 2024, obviously, we gotta take back the White House. We gotta do what we can do in the meantime. So make sure whatever you're running for locally, that you are going, you're hitting the streets, and you're talking to people. And you got to fundraise and do all the stuff, try to get media coverage, all the other, like, the big campaign stuff. But you have to make a connection door to door to your neighbor, and so they're excited to vote for you, and they tell someone else, and they tell someone else. Because the Democrats, they have the media. And Michigan, we have a really big issue right now with Governor Whitmer. If I could briefly explain, there's a loophole there's a cap on how much you can raise from an individual, but there's a loophole created by a former Secretary of State that if you're facing a recall, the cap isn't there. So people have been trying to recall Whitmer, which none of the recalls are like into effect because they haven't had enough verifications or there are errors or whatever. But because so it's not even official, but she's been like, oh, you guys are trying to recall me, so I'm going to not have a cap. So people have been raising an astronomical amount of money for her. So if you're listening and you're from Michigan, you better hit that ground and make that one-on-one connection. Because if you try to outspend, I don't think you can outspend the Democrats right now in Michigan. I don't think you can. So you better do a really good grassroots campaign and get on the ground and start talking to people. On Monday, I'll have Tony Ferlini in here. He's the clerk of Macomb, and we're going to be talking about election integrity. And I know that's important to people. And we're going to talk about some positive steps that will hopefully, I know what all he's got to say, but hopefully it'll make some people feel energized in a way that they can do helpful things to protect the integrity of our election, so you can feel confident in the vote, but you still got to go out there and work, and you can't feel discouraged like there's nothing you can do. There's things that you can do. Don't give up. And I know it's bleak kind of living in the nightmare that is Joe Biden, just because they're so incompetent and tyrannical with the things they're trying to do. Like, people are literally out there having to decide from letting all sort of bodily autonomy go versus being able to provide for their family. And obviously their family has priority, but this is also a big liberty issue too. It's a huge liberty issue. So I think and I see people who are vaccinated saying this isn't right and standing up. So I hope more people will stand up. And that's another reason why I find the Nicki Minaj story really fascinating, because in her stream of tweets, she admitted that she'll probably get it because she wants to go on tour. But now they've come against her, so I wonder if she's going to be more like, no, we got to fight for liberty for this. This is America. Like, she mentioned China and how you couldn't speak in China, and now she feels like that same feelings that she had in communist China, she feels in the United States of America. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. But we have these shows and we have these conversations to empower you with information, empower other people with information, so we can take our country back. And at least whether you're a Dem or a Republican, like, we need people who believe in liberty and freedom. So I know some Democrats who are no longer Democrat, and maybe they're not quite Republican yet, but they don't like what's going on. And there's a lot more moderate Democrats who don't like what's going on than you know. My sister's friends with a lot of consultants that she met, like with her work at the RNC and in DC and other places around the country. She said they are so quiet about the condition of a lot of things going on, especially the Afghanistan, because they know Biden blew it big time. You might have other fools like Joy Reid and other people trying to carry water for Biden, but other people know that it was a blunder. There's enough people who know. They're not going to come out and say it, but enough people know. So you go ahead. If you're running for something, please go ahead and try to make that human connection and make your case, because it's really important that we still fight, and you can win. You can. I promise you can win. But if you do not try, if you do not put yourself out there and you actually work for it and try to make that connection, try to make that case with people, we will get to a time. We will get to a time when it is too late. So do not speed that process up along. I did not say in the beginning that Brighter Michigan PAC is a sponsor. I thank them for the space. If I triggered you today, they don't care. They don't care. It doesn't work like that. I thank them for the space. Please go to blacktnews.com. Share different content that I have. Follow me on my social media. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all at Black T News. Those are my handles. On Twitter, it is at True Black T. True Black T. And if you would like to support, please leave a donation on blacktnews.com. When I first had my website up, it was only through PayPal but you don't need a PayPal account. You can just enter in your card information and it'll take it. I thank you guys if you're willing to do that. And of course, we got stuff in the store. Please check out the different stuff that I have. Please check out my merchandise. Please check out my books. Please check out my mugs and other things. I appreciate you guys. God bless you. And tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern time, we will have a Let's Talk about it, and we will have a nice time, and then we'll be back here during the week again. God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.